Meg, Sarah, how are we doing tonight?
Doing okay. How are you?
Yeah.
Good time. First time we're actually seeing each other.
Yeah.
So basically the structure for tonight is, we look through, for everybody tuned in, we look through and we're going to break down some things, some different questions that we had for each division. I have the cheat sheet. I have everybody's answers, and you guys are going to love this. Some of the answers that Sarah and Meg put down are awesome. I have some too, but you're here to hear them, not me. So I will be tuning in as well, or chiming in rather, but they've got some awesome answers. So to go through some things, basically, if I remember correctly, Meg, you had the Western Division. Sarah, you had the Central, and then I took the East with that. So let's start off with the first question that we had about which team overperforms. And we'll start with you, Sarah, talking about the AL and the NL West divisions.
Centrals. Sarah
Centrals. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Meg.
We both have this look of panic, like, oh gosh, we got to swap answers.
Yes, thank you.
I was like, I can read what Meg wrote, but I think I'd rather hear her explanation. So for the AL Central, I had the Guardians. I am really, really excited about Stephen Vogt and what he's going to do with this team. I think it's a team that most people are expecting to take a step back this year, as they did last year to an extent as well. So overperform, I read to be just overperform expectations that we have for them. So I went with them there. And in the NL Central, I went with the Brewers, who are another team that I think people are maybe seeing as, Craig Counsell left, all of these Corbin Burns rumors, what have you. Maybe people are not expecting them to be what they've been in that division for a while. So I think they will overperform that. And, I really like William Contreras. And I think that he is really on the verge of superstardom. So that plays a role into that choice as well.
That's awesome. And my good friend Craig is loving your Cleveland pick. He even sent me a picture of he's already made some World Series bets on Cleveland. Like he's all in on Cleveland. So I know he's watching this right now and he's probably sending me text. That's awesome. So that's a great pick there. Meg, what about you with the West now that I have divisions right?
So, well, before I answer, I'll say I struggled a bit with this exercise because here we are. We're supposed to be the hot take panel, right? And you got two stat nerds. So I'm not prone to takes. I don't know about you, Sarah, but I have kind of two answers here, one of which is maybe a little bit spicier than the other. So you can pick which one is best. I mean, the spiciest answer, I think, is actually the Angels outperforming what we expect of them. I think that it's not likely, but it's a hot take, right? These are supposed to be a little bit unusual. So I think that there's a possibility that Ron Washington comes in and completely changes the culture of that organization, that you get a healthy Mike Trout back, that you get a bounce back season from Rendon, however long that season ends up being for him, right? And that you have a pitching staff that, while completely ordinary from a projection perspective, might just be ordinary. And an ordinary pitching staff for the Angels would be a really welcome change of pace for them. So do I think that they're going to win the West? No, absolutely not. But do I think that they could be something resembling, a decent team? Yeah, I do. Maybe if the right things fall into place. And especially after losing Ohtani, I imagine that would be a pretty welcome departure from expectation for their fans.
Indeed. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to throw y'all a little bit of a curveball because Sarah mentioned something and Meg, you mentioned something as well. With rookie manager Stephen Vogt taking over the Guardians with absolutely no managerial experience, and then you've got Ron Washington replacing an old school guy in Phil Nevin as an even older school guy. How do you two see the influence of those managerial styles on the teams that they're taking over, impacting this season?
I can start if you want. I mean, I think that, I don't know. I don't really need to offer Ron Washington's bona fides, right? I think we're all pretty familiar with his track record. I think that there's a difference between being old school and being inflexible. And I think that when you look at Wash's track record, particularly when you look at some of the defensive changes that he was able to sort of get the players on board with in Atlanta, I think that he has a way of doing things. He certainly is a bringer of his own culture in terms of what he wants a clubhouse to look like, the kind of effort that he's expecting, that sort of thing. But he doesn't strike me as the kind of manager who isn't going to be able to connect with players or convince them of a new way of doing things. And I think that when you have a team that went through what Los Angeles went through last year, this lingering, looming question of Ohtani, trying to go all in at the trade deadline, and then, making us all refamiliarize ourselves with waiver claim rules just a couple of weeks later, having a new sort of perspective, even if it comes with sort of maybe a little bit older school view of the game, I think could be really welcome there.
Indeed. Sarah?
Yeah, and I think, just to add on to that, I think there's a difference between old and old school, right? Just because these guys are older doesn't mean that they inherently see the game that much differently than we might. And I think we saw that with Bruce Bochy and what he did with the Rangers this year. I think we saw it with a guy like Terry Francona, who stuck around as long as he did because of adapting. And you may say he's old school in certain ways, but we know that these guys still understand the game and what will make them better. And I think that's what matters at the end of the day. And on the other side of the spectrum, I don't think Stephen Vogt will be good because he is so young. I think everything that will make him so good is there at any age. I just think his optimism, his energy, the way he approaches the game will be this way on opening day this year and for so many years to come. And I think that's totally different from Wash in terms of experience. And in terms of personality type, it's kind of that same. Really, really happy to be in there. So I like that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I would say the only exposure I had with Vogt when I was in the Tampa Bay area, it was his rookie season. If y'all remember, he went 0-for-25 as a Tampa Bay Ray, and then they DFA'd him. So it's like, I remember his final at bat, he tried to leg out an infield single, and this was before replay, so he was called out. You're like, oh man, that might be the guy's last chance to get a hit. Now he's going to be a major league manager in 2024. So that rolled out. My choices, and I don't know how this happened. I put the Yankees and the Mets for both divisions. And as you can see in the wall behind me, I'm supposed to hate the Yankees. But I have them as overperforming this year because they're constantly underperforming. And I would say the same thing with the Mets. I don't think we really saw them coming in at 75 and 87 last year as they did. But that's when I looked at this. These are the two teams that I felt that were going to take that step forward this year and maybe finally play up to expectations.
Yeah. And then I think I didn't mention the Giants were my overperform pick for the West. Part of that is it feels silly to pick the team that was just in the World Series as one that can potentially overperform. We'll get to the Dodgers in a second, but I think that, there's been all this consternation about how they've been able to navigate free agency and the guys that they've been able to sign and sort of coming up, second place on a lot of the free agents that they wanted, not just this winter, but in winters past. But I do think that there is a good team here. And I think that their front office is good at sort of not only playing the matchups that we all expect, but being able to find sort of unexpected ways to increase value on that roster. I don't think that was purely a Gabe Kapler phenomenon, right? So I don't necessarily expect them to win the West, but I do think that they will outperform expectation relative to kind of the gloomy offseason that a lot of people felt like they had.
Right. And we have another new manager situation there as well to impact things. We'll stick with you, Meg, and go with the next thing we're going to talk about was which team disappoints in each division. So who were your two disappointment teams for the West?
Okay, so for the West, and I will offer two teams here because, again, it can be a little spicy. So I see a scenario where things don't go well for Houston. And I, again, don't think it to be particularly likely, but I think that, if you look at the way that their outfield is currently configured, you can look to the outfield and there's a potential for this offense if those guys don't perform well. And if you end up with some of their older players who are shockingly reaching free agency after this season, sort of either regressing or not being able to build on the positive momentum that they showed in the back half of last year, that it could be a just okay offense. Again, I don't think it's likely, and Jordan is amazing, but like, what kind of offensive player is Jeremy Pena? he seems like kind of a 100 WRC plus guy. That's useful in a plus defender, but not what we saw from him in his rookie season, right? And then you have a pitching staff that is good, but is headlined by Verlander, who, what happens if he gets hurt? What happens if he regresses? And then you look to a farm system that isn't as deep as it's been in past years. And, maybe they're not able to add at the deadline in a way that helps them keep pace this year with the Rangers and other teams in that division. So that's one answer. And then like the really hot take, and I think this is very unlikely, as you will see from some of my later answers, would be the Rangers, where maybe you look at that team and their strategy of building a rotation mostly for the postseason that doesn't get all healthy until halfway through the year ends up, putting them behind the 8 ball with the rest of the division to a point where they can't dig their way out of it. Again, I don't find that particularly likely, but there is a scenario where they are just like a little less good than we're expecting and find themselves in a dogfight with the rest of that division.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. What about the NL side of things?
So this is a cheat answer, and I want to acknowledge that up front. The Dodgers, but only because the expectations for this team are so astronomically high right now that it seems impossible that they could meet them. Again, they likely will, because like what a team they've put together. But, you look at them and they've added all of these guys and you sit there and you say, could they still use another starter? Like, don't they kind of maybe need another starter still, because they have so many innings that are going to guys who have been hurt for the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a path to them winning, like, I don't know, 95 games instead of 100 or 105. I acknowledge that this is a little bit of a cheat answer. The Padres, I just don't think our expectations are particularly high for them. And like the less said about Colorado, maybe the better. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Before I jump over to Sarah, question with the Astros offense. Do you feel this may be the year that they elevate Kyle Tucker to the second spot of the lineup instead of leaving him down in the bottom half? And maybe that'll help the offense?
I hope so. And to be clear, this is like a good lineup and this is the hot take panel, right? These are takes. It's a good offense. Like, it's going to be fine. Everyone probably it's going to be fine. But yeah, I mean, like his placement in the lineup has been kind of baffling for a while. And so I do wonder if, given kind of where they're at from a coaching staff perspective, if things will shift a little bit and we might see him elevated, because he's, I think that baseball people talk about Kyle Tucker in the way that they should, but I still don't think a national audience really understands just how good that guy is, because he's really very good. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he moves up.
Awesome. Sarah, what about the AL Central? Who are your disappointing teams? The AL and the NL Central. Who are your disappointments?
So disappointments is such a fun question to me, because it's all about what we think of these teams, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here and I talk to Mandy Bella, who covers the Guardians, all the time about the AL Central. Now it's kind of the little brother of all the divisions. They have set records for being the worst division in a single season before. It's often the division where the worst division winner is coming out. So given all of that, it really felt like the only team that has expectations is the Twins. So I had to pick them. And that's no disrespect to the other teams, but given what we're expecting out of the Royals, out of the Guardians, out of the Tigers, out of the White Sox, it doesn't seem like a bar that they would end up shooting under. So I think the answer has to be the Twins, and I still expect them to win this division. Pablo Lopez, basically already named opening day starter, is so good. And I'll get to another player really high on in our next question, but I think it has to be the Twins, because I don't think we're really high on any other AL Central team.
Yeah, I would agree. Meg, same boat.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, because everyone else you're kind of hoping they take a step forward, but yeah, I think that Minnesota, it feels like it's still kind of their division to lose. So if they do, I think it would be pretty disappointing.
And I would be remiss if we didn't mention the Tigers quick. Just say Tigers as well. I mean, really excited to see them as well.
Yeah.
I know Paul's distracted watching the Lions right now, but if I didn't mention the Tigers upside, Paul Sporer may get upset at me. Sarah, you had more to say there?
No, I was going to move on to the NL Central.
Oh, go ahead.
So
Yes, please.
my answer there is kind of like the Dodgers' answer in that this is a team that set the expectations really high in the Cubs. And, you sign a manager to the largest contract we've seen. We expect you to make moves, get guys, be really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe they end up with Cody Bellinger again eventually. But as currently constructed, I'm not convinced that this is a team that would run away with that division. So I think even if they do sign him, and even if they're really good, they put themselves, after getting rid of a very, very good manager in David Ross, for an equally good one. They've set themselves up for some very high expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that fake tweet about Matt Chapman signing with the Cubs certainly would have been welcome news. I saw some of that going around this morning, and I was like, "There's only like one place that I even have this." So yeah, one of the great things about social media.
I saw when Bob Nightingale and Jeff Passan both announced the Hector Neris signing, they're like, oh, their patience has been, rewarded. They got one of their guys. And I'm like, look, I like Hector Neris. He's a perfectly nice reliever, but I don't think that's what Cubs fans are really expecting this offseason.
Yeah, that's not the marquee move that they're hoping for.
No.
I put down for mine in the AL, I put down the Orioles, and it's not because I'm still bitter about last year. It's when you have a team that won in 101 games and won so many close games. We can go back and look at Seattle in 2022, how that impacted them in 2023. So I put that, and not that Baltimore is going to be a bad team. Wouldn't surprise me if they won the division again. But when you overperform like that in close games, it's tough. And then in the NL East, I put the Marlins only because I'm concerned where the offense is going to come from this year. When you lose Jorge Soler, and if they don't bring him back, I don't know what they're going to do for offense.
Yeah.
With that. All right, let's jump over. Next question we had was breakout player from each division. And Meg, I want to start with you because I really love your choice here for the AL because this is a hot take. This is a really hot take, and people need to listen to this one.
Okay, so I struggled here because I think the obvious answers have already broken out. Like the obvious answer here is Evan Carter, but Evan Carter already broke out. People know who Evan Carter is, right? And you can just keep with Rangers guys and go with Wyatt Langford, for instance, who's one of their top prospects, and I imagine is going to make their opening day roster potentially, and is going to be really, really good. But like that feels too obvious. So I went with Prelander Baroa, who is a reliever for the Mariners. Stick with me, okay? He is a guy who I think a lot of people who are prospect fans will be familiar with because he throws incredibly hard. He has a hellacious slider. His command is kind of comes and goes. But Seattle has had a lot of success in really helping this profile of guy optimize. And we could have a lot of questions about Seattle's offense, even with the offseason moves, especially because of the offseason moves that they made. But pitching remains a developmental strength for them. And I think that, if this guy can dial it in a little bit, he has the chance to be a high leverage guy at the back of that bullpen who really helps to bolster that unit. So I picked him in the interest of picking a less obvious choice. I think that, if you want guys who might have a bigger impact from a WAR perspective, look to the Rangers, but they're known names. This is the problem with breakouts is that you name them after they've been broken out for 6 months.
Yeah, and I mean, just what Seattle needs, another nasty guy in the back with Munoz and with Brash, and then you add Baroa to this. It could, they could shorten some games in a hurry with that. And then what about your NL breakout guy? So
this is maybe kind of going back on that profile a little bit, but I picked Nolan Jones. I think that he performed very well from an offensive perspective last year. He managed to do that away from core, so I don't think that he's just like a mountain high mirage. But I think the most impressive thing to me about his rookie season was just how much his outfield defense improved, certainly more than my expectations coming into the year. And so I think he's put himself in a position where, he's an obvious opening day guy. He'll be able to stick in a corner and, will his bat regress a little bit. I mean, it might, like if you look at his BABIP, it was very high last year, but I think that there is real offensive potential here. And so I'm picking him because I think that he will manage to maintain enough of the offensive production. The defense is solid. And so I'm picking Nolan Jones.
It's funny when you think about Nolan Jones, the fact that Cleveland was dead last in home runs last year by 27. Right. They hit 27 fewer home runs than any other team, and they gave Nolan Jones away as they did. Sarah, what about your 2 picks for the Central?
So in the Central, I went with Royce Lewis. I know maybe he's already broken out with what he did in the postseason, but we haven't seen a complete full, really, really good season from him yet. Yeah. And I think he's the type of guy who, when healthy, and that's the thing with him, can really help carry this offense. He was good at third base, and I'm just really, really excited for him to be healthy. He's a guy who has been through so much. We know how much it means to him to suit up every day, to be there, and to get these chances. And I'm really excited to see him really thrive in that spotlight.
Yeah, indeed. And because he showed, obviously he was hitting a grand slam like every other day at one point over the summer, but it would just be nice to get one full season out of his body so it doesn't fail him. And then I really like your NL Central choice here because, again, I have the cheat sheet. But tell everybody else who you've got down for NL Central.
So in the NL Central, I went with more of a hot take, I guess. I took Paul Skeens. I know we don't know exactly when he'll throw his first pitch in the Pirates uniform, but I think even if he's up by mid-season, that he will be enough of an impact to really, really make a name for himself. We saw how good he was in college. I just think it should be no surprise to anyone who's seen him pitch that it will translate at the big league level. And I'm just really excited to see him. And, seeing the ETA is 2024, all the prospect list just made me so excited. And I'm like, hey, if all the experts think he's going to be up, I'm all in.
Indeed. I mean, an alumni friend of mine posted a picture. His friend he and his son were at the airport here in Charlotte, where I live, and he saw Paul Skeens at the airport. So either Paul Skeens was connecting through Charlotte for something, which was very likely, or he was working at Tread Athletics, which is based here in the Charlotte area. So maybe he was trying to get even some more work in because a lot of pitchers come over here. If they're not going to Drive Line in Seattle, they're coming over to Tread here in Charlotte. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But obviously a lot of folks we're going to want to watch in that direction. For me, I think I went hot take in the AL East. I said Nick Pivetta. I always believe in this stuff. I like Nick Pivetta, and one of these days he's going to find success and get his ERA down below 4. And I think this year is going to be that year. Lord help me. And then in the NL, it's like a one skill away guy. As you go to the Baseball Savant, you go pull up Edward Cabrera's page, you see so much red. And then you see that 1% in the walk rate. It is blue. And you see everything else. It's so good. And then you have that 1%. And it's like, just find some control. I'm not asking you to get to like the 75th percentile, but just get somewhere close to 50. And let's see what happens. So to me, the stuff is there. But kind of like Royce Lewis, we've had some injury issues in the past, and he hasn't been able to fully get there. But to me, it's like one skill away. I just don't know if you can teach the control, but it's got to be better than 1%. Sarah, we'll come back to you, and let's talk about what player will be a surprise award contender. So Rookie of the Year, MVP, Cy Young, somebody that's not, we're not expecting to win an award, and that you've picked in each one of the central divisions for that.
So again, here I was kind of dealing with rotor expectations, and one team that I think will outperform, that I didn't pick here, but I do think will outperform what we'll expect of them, is the Royals. And a big reason for that, I think, will be Bobby Witt Jr., who has shown that his defense has gotten better at the big league level. We've seen the power and speed. I know we know he's really good. I don't know if we think of him as someone who might get MVP votes. So I put him down as an MVP contender. Do I expect him to win it? No. But if he has another 30 season or a 40 year, I know these are maybe a bit cheap in these days with the new rules, but it's still happening. He does something like that for a team that overperforms, he will get that consideration for sure.
They're a nice young offense to watch, and he's definitely a good piece of it. And you're trying to see, MJ Melendez taking that next step forward. He made some nice progress towards the end of last year when they put up on leadoff, and looks like he's going to hit leadoff this year too, which will help set the table for Bobby Witt Jr. So, what about the who's your surprise award contender for the NL Central?
So I already mentioned him, but I'm William Contreras again for MVP because, I mean, he has shown us his offense is as good as his brothers, if not better, and his defense is better than Wilson, right? He has really transformed behind the plate, especially with Milwaukee. That coaching staff, it seemed like he learned go out this year. He's the guy who's going to be a really great catcher on both sides of the ball, and if this team performs the way I expect them to, that's the profile of a kind of guy who I think would get MVP votes. If you're sitting here, I don't think most people would default him, so I took him as my surprise MVP contender.
No, I like that because I'm trying to look over here. Unless I'm missing somebody, I probably am. Like Pudge Rodriguez would have been the last catcher to win MVP. And that was 1999, unless I'm just kind of overlooking somebody obvious.
Buster,
I'm sorry?
yeah.
Thank you.
Buster,
all right. Sorry, Justin and Danielle, my Giants fans with that. So it's, catcher is definitely a rare one. So that could, the season Milwaukee, because I'm with y'all. Both of you had said like the central divisions are kind of flat where nobody's truly separating themselves from the rest of the pack. And we could definitely see some action in the central. Meg, what about your picks in the West?
Okay. Stick with me. Anthony Rendon, comeback player of the year. It's a hot take.
I've been drinking from this can, but you said that.
I mean, I think that it's very easy to forget how good a player Anthony Rendon used to be because we just have seen so little of Anthony Rendon. And I also think that comeback player of the year is a very weird award because, we have people struggle with all kinds of stuff, and some of it is performance related and some of it is injury and some of it is life stuff away from the field. And so I think it's a kind of squishy award in terms of the qualifications. And I think that if he manages to put together, a reasonably full season, even if he's not quite a qualified hitter, and performs well, and plays regularly and is able to take some heat off of himself for the season should be shorter, comment, which here's another of my hot takes. I kind of agree with him that the season should be just a little bit shorter. It would be okay if it were just a little shorter, not a lot shorter, but like a little shorter. It would be okay.
We got to come back to that point. I'm putting a pin in that because that's something I want to talk about later.
I think that that's my hot take. Anthony Rendon, comeback player of the year.
So if he gets to 100 games, he's going to win the award going away. Is that what we're getting to? Because he's averaged like 58 the last 3 years.
He's got to hit, some, and he's got to be a contributor. But like, I'm very, of all the people on that Angels team, the person I am the most curious to see Ron Washington's effect on is Rendon.
That's a good point.
So, I think that there are a lot of ways to be a professional baseball player. I don't think many are as vocal as he is in terms of like it being a job for them and that kind of being the extent of it. I don't think he's alone in that, but I'll be very curious to see what that relationship evolves into. So, yeah.
I will say somebody on the screen said Rendon would be a top 5 MVP candidate last year. It's his hot take, and I'm his. Okay. That's giveaway. It was me. So
see,
that couldn't have gone any worse last year. And then when you have them on multiple fantasy rosters, it was even worse.
Yeah.
Yikes. So what about your NL pick?
So like Sarah, I went with a catcher here and I went with Will Smith. I think that, it's so easy to get lost in the Ohtani and Mookie and Freddie Freeman of that Dodgers lineup. But Will Smith is incredibly good in all aspects of the game. Like he hits very well, not just for a catcher, but especially for a catcher. And I think that for the contingent of the voting base that looks to advanced stats, they're going to be moved by how good he is defensively. So I don't know that, it's hard for a catcher to win MVP, as you mentioned. It does happen, but particularly given the limitations on their playing time, I think that they have a harder time. But I think that he is sometimes under-recognized on a very good Dodgers team. And so, yeah, Will Smith, MVP.
Yeah, I mean, I love both the catcher picks. And it's when I was thinking, I remember talking to somebody about Will Smith at one point with, they would give him plate appearances at DH, which obviously will not be available this year. So, right. There is going to be a cap on how much he can play with that, because with Ohtani just clogging. I mean, it's a great problem to have, clogging DH. But those plate appearances at DH to, get some rest are just not going to be there for him. And so he's going to have to, what he's going to do, he's going to have to maximize from his time there. But the lineup, as you said, is just incredibly deep and sick. With my picks in the NL, I mentioned this earlier about the Marlins and my concern for offense, but my surprise award contender is John Birdie coming back to get a stolen base title. John Birdie is still very fast, and that club is going to have to find some places for offense. And that was the crazy thing last year. John Birdie raises his batting average by 55 points, gets on base more, and runs a lot less. He went from 41 to 16 steals. But with the loss of Soler in that lineup, it's got to come from somewhere. So my hot take was John Birdie's going to come back and get that stolen base title in the National League, as they just let him run from that. And then I had to do something with the Rays here, so I chose Austin Shenton to compete to win the Rookie of the Year title. Austin Shenton can hit. That's his thing. He hits, and he's hit everywhere. And Tampa Bay obviously has to restructure their offense this year. So enough said about that. But they've got to find some ways to find some offense this year. And I think obviously it's with the chalk is going to be guys like Carter and Langford and whatnot. But I'm looking for non-chalk with hot takes. So I went Austin Shenton, somebody that's on the 40-man roster.
That helps.
All right. Let's see. We're going to get to one, and this is all over the place. Just telling you guys right now, we have the most newsworthy event of the season in each one of the divisions. So Sarah, we'll come back to you and let's talk about your newsworthy events in the AL and the NL Centrals.
So I have to say, I did these after each review. And I read yours, and I was like, how am I supposed to come up with something as good as those? These require so much creativity, and not the type of creativity that I have. I can find you any stuff. I can make any argument. But out of thin air, creating a newsworthy event, I was like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. So in the AL Central, I went with that idea that I mentioned already about how the AL Central is often the weakest of the division. So I said the AL Central winner will not have the fewest wins of all of the division winners. They did last year, the Twins with, I believe, 87 wins. So I'm basically picking the Twins to win more games than the Brewers, if everything plays out the way I expect it to. That was my take there. And in the NL Central, I don't know about most newsworthy events, but I thought this would be newsworthy, so I picked it. O'Neal Cruz will hit a ball 125 miles an hour. I almost had something about Ellie De La Cruz and O'Neal Cruz, who will be healthy and in games against each other for the first time at the big league level. Each having like 100-mile-an-hour throw in the same game. I went with O'Neal Cruz crushing a ball.
125 would just go through somebody's glove. I don't even know how leather could stop 125.
And I don't even want to get in front of 125. I don't know if it's even scientifically possible. Like, we got into the low 120s. We've seen them. He's done it. He has the hardest hit ball track by StatCast, but we haven't gotten to that middle of the 120s. And I don't know. Like, we need someone from NASA or something to tell me what is the hardest scientifically. They wouldn't back and hit a baseball.
Yeah, when would the baseball just evaporate? Last year, there was two. O'Neal Cruz was here in Charlotte playing against the Knights, and one of his, he had 2 batted balls, I think, that were over 117. One hit a pitcher in the leg, knocked him out of the game, and the other one like went off the ball. It was one of these, like, the second baseman could have jumped up, tried to catch it. I mean, it just seemed like it just carried forever. It was incredible just to hear the sound live in a AAA ballpark that didn't have that many fans, so you could literally hear what that sounded like coming off the bat, just the contact he makes. So yeah, if he hits 125, what is it, 121 or 122 is our current record, right? 121.
I believe it's 122 point something. I meant to look it up before this, but yeah, we haven't gotten into the fours or anything like that yet.
Just insane to even comprehend. Meg, what about your 2 selections?
Okay. This is not takey, and people are going to be like, didn't you just say this team was going to disappoint? But I didn't mean it, and I said that. I have the Rangers winning 117 games and setting a new win record. I think that this team is going to be very potent. I think that if it all comes together and they get DeGrom, Molly, Scherzer all back healthy, they have solid guys for the back end of that rotation. They seem to be really committed to trying to improve their bullpen. And I think that offense is going to be incredibly potent. And apart from the Astros and like maybe the Mariners, Havesies, I think that they have the potential to do some really amazing things in the West. So that's my AL West. They said
before moving to the NL, do the Rangers need to do anything else to get in that direction, or are you happy with what they currently have? I mean, they just signed David Robertson the other day to address that bullpen situation towards the back, but they need to keep going. Or are they okay?
I mean, I still don't feel like they have a lights out closer option. I know that Jose Leclerc was good for them during the regular season last year. I'm convinced that guy's arm is going to fall off like any day now, just because of how intense his usage was. So I think that, if they wanted to, they could go get a screw you guy at the back of that bullpen. But I think that unit is much better than it was last year. They're pot committed to their starter strategy, right? So I don't see them adding more there than they already have. The thing about them is that if they get to July and they're close, but they're not quite where they want to be, they still have a very, very good farm system. So I think that as they're currently constituted, they'll probably stick with this crew. And now watch, we'll get off and they'll go sign Jordan Montgomery or something. But I think that this group is what they want to go into opening day with. And then we have seen them be willing to be very aggressive come the trade deadline. And they still have a number of really good prospects in their system where if they wanted to go get a guy, they could. So TBD, but I think that this is a very, very strong group.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me to have them right back in the World Series, from where they're positioned. And then what about your NL side? What do you have there?
I have Ethan Salas debuting for the Padres as the biggest thing in that division, which, given that the Dodgers exist and had the offseason they did, is maybe a little cheeky on my part. But I think that Salas is going to be a very, very special player. The prospect industry is sort of in consensus now about how good he is. I remember hearing about what he looked like last spring before he had really percolated to the top. And, we had a lot of discussions internally. He wasn't even 17 yet, I think, or was just about to turn 17. And so it's like, do you really want to put this guy like that far up the 100? But I think that he seems like a pretty special talent, and they're in a position where, he's going to be their guy of the future. And I could see, particularly if this season doesn't end up going really well and they want to give him the opportunity to get some reps at the big league level, him debuting sometime in September. So yeah, Ethan Salas coming soon to Petco, maybe.
Crazy. It's crazy to see like somebody that young playing even in A ball, maybe even double A, but just even the fact that he's likely going to be at the major league level this year at that age is just insane that it could happen. But let's see. My 2 I put down, I said Juan Soto is going to out homer Aaron Judge with it. And
yeah,
I'm sorry, Sarah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
I put that. I mean, yeah, the ballpark's a perfect fit for him. He's obviously motivated. He wants to get his next deal type of thing. But yeah, to me, it's like that's going to be, and that's one of the reasons why I had the Yankees as overperforming. You're going to have these two. It's like, what pitcher is going to want to pitch around Juan Soto to face Aaron Judge? It's just that's not going to happen. And so he's going to see pitches in the zone, and we know what he likes to do with pitches in the zone. Again, as a Rays fan, I'm like, oh boy. But that's where I have that. And then the other one, it's kind of one of these statistical anomalies. I'd look this up, but since I used the Mitchell report as my benchmark and said, okay, since the Mitchell report, how many guys have driven in 140 or more runs? And the answer is 2. Prince Fielder, and then Ryan Howard did it twice. That's it. And we have not seen that since 2009. And so my hot take was Austin Riley's driving in 140 plus runs this year, because that Atlanta lineup is just loaded, as we know. And one of the weird things when I was looking into Austin Riley, he 199 with runners in scoring position last year. Kind of crazy. But previous years, 2 years prior, he hit about 300 in that situation. We know there's no year-over-year stickiness in that, but he can't be that bad again. And that lineup is just so stacked. So I'm looking for him to be the first guy to drive in 140 plus runs since Ryan Howard did it in 2009. I think Howard and Fielder both did it the same year, and we haven't had anybody since with that. All right, let's see. Let's work to some of the award winners. So I posed some questions to y'all and said, based off the odds makers, I said, the top 5 for AL Cy Young right now are Garrett Cole, Kevin Gausman, Framber Valdez, Pablo Lopez, and Luis Castillo. Taking those 5 off the board, who's somebody that we should be looking at for that Cy Young conversation this year? Sarah, we'll start with you.
So I put Dylan Cease because I will never stop believing in the stuff. We know it is there. I know he didn't have a great year this year. But I think the White Sox, the expectations are low. This guy has heard his name in every trade talk throughout the offseason. I think that's going to motivate him. And I think the motivated pitcher, chip on shoulder, is something that will really, really help. So even if the team isn't great, I have him as someone who could sneak in there instead.
Okay, a couple of questions to both of you about that. For one, what odds would you put on Dylan Cease staying in Chicago this year? And then B, with the changing with Yasmani Grandal not being behind the plate, as Grandal struggled overall with throwing, with framing. When I looked for throwing, he was the absolute worst catcher the last 2 years. So with the changing catcher, with them going with Martin Maldonado as their starting catcher this year, how much do you think that's going to help Cease? So, the odds of him staying in Chicago, 1, and then the change of catcher helping him out there.
Staying in Chicago, I saw the most recent report. What was it? They're asking for the sun and the moon. So I think it seems like he'll be their opening day. So that's why I had him in the AL, to the point that by July, maybe he's in the NL. So I was going under the impression that they'll hold on to him. And I actually think Maldonado, we know with him, the numbers have not bore out how he has talked about for years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But every pitcher loves him. Yeah. And I had actually forgotten that they had signed him until you said it just now. And that actually adds to my prediction, because even if the numbers, the framing, it hasn't been there in a while, he is a guy who pitches love. I think Dylan Cease will benefit from working with him.
Awesome.
I want to study Martin Maldonado. He is the perfect guy for stat people, particularly who are obsessed with catcher defense, to just be completely flummoxed by. Because you're right, Sarah. The way that people talk about him, you would expect to be okay, well, he can't hit, but I'm going to go look at his framing numbers and they're going to be amazing. Mm-hmm. And they're not. Last year they were terrible, actually. Right. So I don't know. I find him, I don't get it, because it's not like he was with the Astros. They know what they're doing. It's not like they can't look at stats and be I can't frame. I don't know. It's very strange.
But he is such a good intangible guy. Yeah. Remember the El Reptile cleats he was wearing in the preseason? That's what he does for his pitchers. And as much as these guys are incredible. Everything they do is beyond comprehension. They're people, and I think that he is like stroking the ego in all the right ways and doing everything that these guys love to do. And apparently that's valuable enough.
Yeah.
Based off what you said, it sounds like he's going to be a future manager and get his own team here, like Stephen Vogt did. My pick was George Kirby for this award. I want George Kirby to come back and throw the knuckleball that he threw in Tim Wakefield's honor. He threw it one time, and it was a beautiful knuckleball.
It was so nice.
So it was such a great thing. And I mean, George Kirby, he may walk 5 guys in a season. I'm a huge fan of watching George Kirby pitch. And so that's who I had my pick. So jumping over to NL Cy Young, the odds makers have Spencer Strider, Zach Wheeler, Logan Webb, almost said Brandon, Corbin Burns, and Zach Gallen as the top 5. So taking those 5 off the table, who do y'all think could be in the conversation for NL Cy Young this year?
When are these odds?
What do you first?
When are these odds as of? I'm just curious. Like, what did you pull?
I just went to covers.com and pulled them up like this week.
Okay, that's wild to me because I picked Yamamoto and I feel like I'm cheating by picking Yamamoto as like the possibility here. Everyone knows about the contract. People have had some limited exposure to him pitching with the WBC, but like this guy's fastball, his command, like he has a lot of pitches. It's very special. And I know that people have sort of a bias against shorter pitchers. I hope that doesn't persist with a guy who's proven that he can do what Yamamoto can do in NPB. So I think I'm picking him amongst the names that I have access to. It seemed like the best.
You're not cheating. You're playing within the rules.
I was like, oh, maybe it was before he signed or something. This is going to disappoint a very significant segment of the PitchCon audience. Like, I don't really understand how all the betting stuff works. It's just not the way
I don't. I just like the fantasy sports. I don't gamble.
Yeah.
Sarah, what about you? So I went with Max Fried, and again, I kind of have a chip on the shoulder guy because Max Fried is really, really good. And all of a sudden, all we talk about in that rotation is Spencer Strider, who is, of course, incredible. But I think we've forgotten that as of, 2 years ago, Fried was the ace of this team. And I know he dealt with injuries. And maybe he wasn't as good as he had been last year, but to me, you have a motivated Max Fried who was in a contract here, right? He's going to be a free agent after this season. For the first time, we've heard all of the rumors about how he wants an amount of money that the Braves don't operate within. There's a reason he's the guy who they did not extend at the young age that they did of the others, and props him, get your money, have that belief in your worth. That is a perfectly acceptable way to go about it. But I just feel like, Strider is his teammate. I'm sure they're great friends. And I'm sure he sits there and says, before this guy was here, I was here. I was the leader of the staff. Let's be co-leaders. And I think he can go out and win that Cy Young. And then we would have another Cy Young heading into free agency, which had not happened in a really long time. And now it has happened in 4 straight seasons.
Yeah, that is indeed crazy. And there's got to be a lot of internal motive. And maybe there's the Chris Sale being added to this rotation could help drive more as well with his internal red ass. I don't know what else you want to call it, but he's that's the way he is. Like for me, I guess I went super hot take and I said Tyler Glasnow is going to win the Cy Young. And I say this is hot because you have to pitch innings to win the Cy Young. And Tyler Glasnow has never exceeded 120 innings. But of course he's going to go to the Dodgers. Of course he's going to throw 160. And of course he's going to do all this. And he's going to have all that amazing run support. And I know Nick's not a believer in the fastball. And because I heard him and Paul talking earlier this weekend. But he's like, this is going to be the hot take. Tyler Glasnow is going to pitch 160 innings to win the Cy Young because he's going to go like 22-4 and break my heart. All right, let's jump over to the AL MVP. So the odds were Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Yordan Alvarez, Corey Seager, and Julio Rodriguez are the top 5 by the odds makers. So taking those 5 off the board, who are your picks? Sarah, let's go to you.
So my pick was initially Max, and I'll let her do that. But so I had that, and I was like, well, that's silly. I can add another name. So my second choice was Mike Trout, because Mike Trout is so Mike Trout. Even last year, even Asian, he was one of 3 guys in the 90th percentile or better in order to bring sprint speed. Even at the age Mike Trout that he is referred to as, he is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he may be another chip on his shoulder kind of guy. I know that isn't his MO, but in his heart of hearts, he must be sitting there seeing all of these young guys be so good and having that thought of, hey, they're really good, but so am I. I'm still really, really good.
Yeah.
And so, he's the Hall of Famer. He's done everything. Why not another MVP? I mean, he's had a few years recently where if he had stayed healthy, I think he would have really seriously competed for it. So I went with him.
Yeah, indeed. If I can say Tyler Glasnow can pitch 160, Mike Trout can certainly play 150 and make this happen. So we'll go there. Meg, so we'll transition over to you since you have who Sarah was going to pick on the list. Who do you have down as your AL MVP outside the top five?
I guess I'm just going with catchers and MVP awards here, because I went with Adley Rutschman. I think, like, what do we have to say about Adley? Like, he hits very well. He's an incredible defender. He's a great sort of field general of that young Orioles team. He plays a lot between catching and DH. He played 154 games last year. So, they are making a point of getting his bat in the lineup even on days when they want to give his knees a rest. So I think that, if he can hit 30 home runs, if he can hit like he did last year, if he can play a bunch of games, and you pair that with the defense and what he brings to that team in terms of like being a field marshal, particularly because, I don't know if this contributed to your pick to have the Orioles underperform. Like, that's not a particularly sterling pitching staff, right? He's going to have his work cut out for him. I hope that they're not done and that they add some starters, but having, a catcher of his caliber, I think is probably going to be pretty important for them, sort of outperforming from a pitching perspective. So I went with Rutschman. Yeah.
I like the pick. I mean, it was just awesome to watch him just mature, just get better, like almost immediately upon his call up last year. And it's and he may be spoiling it. I was having this conversation with a friend earlier this month. Like Bo Naylor looks really good, but the bar is here with Rutschman.
Yeah.
Now we got Bo Naylor, and even if Bo Naylor is slightly better than league average, well, he wasn't Rutschman. Well, who is?
Right.
It's one of the things. For me, I put down Alex Bregman, and hear me out. So this is where I was with the Kyle Tucker. If you got Altuve and Kyle Tucker in front of Bregman hitting third, and you got Yordan Alvarez hitting behind them, I'd argue there's not a better insulated hitter in baseball with that situation and the on-base skills in front of him. Bregman's in a contract year trying to play things. And so there's a lot of factors that roll into this, but like hot take, I want Alex Bregman as an MVP, because if they do that lineup, I could see him having a monster year in his walk year from Houston. All right, last one, because we're running close on time too. So the NL MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Bryce Harper were the top 5. Who are some names that we should be looking at outside of those? And Meg, will come back to you.
I went with Matt Olson, which is he the best hitter on his own team? I mean, arguably no, but but he is very, very talented. He had a phenomenal year last year. The sort of leap that he took from the season prior, and like you talk about a guy who always plays, like he's coming off his second straight season of 162 games. So I think that he is a pretty special hitter. I know that the bar to be considered an MVP when you're playing first base is probably pretty high, but hey, it's like it's not without precedent, right? So I think that outside of that group, I think he has an opportunity to just hit his way into the conversation. So,
indeed, the only thing I think that works against him is that there's so many other big names on his team that they may split the votes up a little bit.
But like you gotta have a hot take. It's in the
That's
panel
right.
name.
That's right. Sarah, what about you? Who do you have?
So I went with Corbin Carroll. I know I loved everything about his season last year. We saw the power and speed. We saw him. We saw the leadership, everything intangibles wise with that team getting to where they did in the World Series. And just think if he continues to do that year in, year out, when the Diamondbacks are good, voters will be considering him. We know it shouldn't just be based on team success, but I think for him being on a team like that, it will be very much, oh, they're really, really good. He's their best player. And I think he has a real chance to do that. He's really dynamic. He's still getting better. He's the type of guy who is still committed to get better.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to sit on his laurels from a really, really good rookie. And he's just so much fun. So I love with him.
I'm honestly surprised he wasn't a top 5 guy to begin with in the odds.
Yeah.
It's like, we mentioned the Padres. It sounds like we're all kind of like on the Padres, but there's Tatis Jr. there. I'm just kind of surprised coming off the year of taking the World Series that Corbin Carroll wasn't in top 5. But again, we're all playing by the rules here, and that's what they had as the top 5. I had Trey Turner for mine. Just like obviously he went through a bunch last year, then he got that nice reset on that early August series against the Royals and just took off from there. And so for me, I went with Trey Turner with it because he could be a tremendous. And getting to the lineup thing, can they really leave Kyle Schwarber hitting leadoff again this year? Because that actually blocked Trey Turner from stealing more bases. He was a perfect 30 for 30 last year, but I think he used all of his opportunities because Kyle Schwarber was kind of clogging the bases in front of him.
Yeah.
All right. We said it earlier. I wanted to put a pin on it about shortening the season. So coming back all the way to Anthony Rendon. Meg, you said you wanted to shorten the season a little bit. I'm just curious on both of your thoughts. If Anthony Rendon's in right, how much would you shorten the season?
Not very much. Not very much. We're talking like 10 games at most. But I think that when you have the longer wild card round, like I don't want to cheapen the accomplishment that is the regular season. And I'm going to do that a little bit by what I'm suggesting. But I think that playoff baseball is really exciting to people, particularly with that wild card round being a series now rather than just a single game. And I think having a little bit of breathing room in the schedule so that everyone can rest just a touch and be a little bit sharper for the playoffs wouldn't be the worst idea, because 162 games is so many games. They play so many games.
They do. Kind of like hockey right now where they have the week off for the All-Star break.
Right. So it's like, give a little bit of recovery time. I still think you want to incentivize people really going for the top seeds in their league so that they get a bye. So I don't want it to be too long. And I certainly don't want, the top seed to have to play in that wild card round. But I think giving just a little bit of recovery time, building a little bit more flexibility into the schedule in the event that you have delays or rainouts or smokeouts or whatever, just isn't the worst idea. And getting everyone a little bit fresher for playoffs is, that would be nice, because then we see the best of the best at their best in theory. Indeed.
Sarah, what about you?
I mean, that is the logical, correct take, I'm sure. I love the season as it is, but I do think a little bit shorter we get, teams a lot more prepared for the postseason. Now I'm sitting here doing the math of, okay, 365 days a year, postseason takes a month. So if we played like 320 games and then had the playoffs, that would be ideal for me. With all apologies to Anthony Rendon and every other player's family who would hate me for that suggestion. But I mean, I always want more games, but I do think what Meg said is very, very fair.
Indeed. Or we can go back to the old PCL days and when they played 180, 190 games. No, Nick, you're not allowed yet.
Oh, I actually really didn't mean to enter here, but I have to say, who wouldn't want more baseball? I don't know.
But okay, wait, hold on. I have a compromise proposal, okay? What if we shortened the regular season a little bit, but then made the playoffs longer? They've been playing the playoffs in the Dominican Winter League for like a year and a half. Like that league's playoffs go for like 2 months.
I'm
It's
all
so
in.
long.
Let's get
Yeah.
a round robin.
There
I
you
love
go.
it.
Right? Oh,
Okay.
so much so. I'd actually even say that every team that finishes above 500 should make the playoffs. And
No,
so then
that's
there's a
There you
different
go.
number every
That's
year, and then you can have a bye. You can have that 1-game playoff return, which
That's
is
Oh
so
my
exciting.
God.
Let's be honest.
Nick,
It's
can
the
you
best.
imagine what you're
I
doing
love
to
it.
my site's playoff odds if the size of the field can vary? You're gonna kill us over there.
No, that's gonna
Poor
be great.
Dave
It's
Appleman's
gonna be a
already
good
going,
time.
oh, God, what
Yeah,
am I going to do to recode this?
absolutely not.
Oh, it's fine. Whatever. We'll figure some solution out.
Hey, Nick, I
It'll
just
be
have one
easy.
final point here. My wall is all this craziness. Sarah's got this beautiful organization, and Meg is very minimalist with one picture in the back. I love the different contrast of all the
Well,
pictures.
I have a lot of art in front of me that you can't see, but
Okay.
it's, you know,
So it's like
how
it's
this-
for you, not for
right.
us.
That's for me. I do
Yeah.
have books. Look at all the books. Books.
And bobbleheads.
Yeah, there are some bobbleheads.
Actually, you might like this one, Meg. This is my Luis Castillo.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this is my favorite one. by
Hold
far.
on.
That one's good.
Anyway, and no, here we go. Yeah, let's see what we got. What we got, Jason?
I have the rarest of all bobbleheads. I have a Manny Ramirez Rays bobblehead. He played
Wow.
5 games for the Rays in 2000. I have a Manny Ramirez bobblehead.
All right. Well, since we're comparing, Jason, you'll like this one. This is the Mike Zunino Florida man bobblehead.
God, that's
Oh my
awesome.
gosh.
I might have called in a Jeff Sullivan favor on this one. I was like, hey Jeff, look, I don't ask for a lot, but you gotta go get me the Mike Zanino Florida man one.
Oh,
'cause
we had a
that's
Mike
pretty-
Zanino and I had a love-hate relationship fantasy.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I drafted him and then cut him the year he hit 30 home runs. And
Oh,
we have a
Well,
love-hate relationship.
I
but
hate to do
he's
this,
fun.
but
you gonna kick us out?
I have to kick you out. And I think the real takeaway from this is that more playoffs is good, which includes,
Yeah.
of course, the ever-changing field of the playoffs too.
Oh gosh.
So, Sarah, Meg, Jason, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. It's
Thank you.
amazing. We are, I'm checking it right now. We are just underneath $14,000 raised, which is just
Awesome.
absolutely incredible. I was hoping for 10,000, and the fact that, we're here is just amazing. So really thank you guys so much for being a part of it and just, helping us get this far.
Thank you. This is always
Thanks
a
for
great
having
thing
me.
every year. And thanks for letting me help close it out. I've always
Oh,
wanted to be
man.
a closer.
There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finally, Tampa Bay has one. All right. Take care, everyone.
See
Bye
ya.
everyone.
Good night.